All right. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and that is to introduce properly the next project. This is my wife's request as far as me being able to justify my tools I was buying, saying, oh, it's not worth it for one. And her idea was, that's all right. You're building a hot rod for me after you've done practicing building your truck. So this is what she ended up choosing. I showed her many different things, but it had to be American and it had to have a V8 when it was done. It was her main criteria, and she loves things around 1930. So didn't want something that everyone else had, like a Ford. So I was busy showing her everything from Grahams to Chevrolets to Buicks to Dodge Brothers, you name it, Chryslers. Anyway, when I showed her this, she was sold on it. So this is a 1932 Willys 6 for straight 6, 90 series A. Now, what the A means, there's a bit of confusion about this, is that it is the second half of 1932. They never made anything in 1933, but they called it a 1933 model year. So this is where this confusion comes in. But when you look up the Willys Overland and Night Registry, it literally dies at the end of 1932, but their model year was the last 6 months of the year. So up until June, it was called a 690. And the main differences is that externally they had a bit of a lip at the top here, and they had a different dash. So this has got the later model dash in it. Otherwise they had just these little instruments separated, but not in an enclosed panel. I'm by no means an expert. Now, what is confusing is that it seems that the Australian models continue to use the early 32 bonnet sides or hood sides. Now, in the US, they had these opening doors. I think Buicks had them around the same time. And so that's one of the visual differences that we don't get in Australia. All right, so it's the same 6, the basis of it was later used in my truck, believe it or not. It's 193 cubic inch, or to be technical, 192.88 according to my calculator for bore and stroke. Updraft carburetor. It's a flathead straight 6. So yeah, a whole of 65 horsepower. Yeah. So yeah, not a head screamer by any stretch of the imagination. And yes, it did have an optional crank. And believe it or not, this thing here, well, I'm moving the whole car, still turns over on the crank, and you hear this thump, thump, the old compression noises coming out of the exhaust, and run when it's parked. Yeah, right. So anyway, it would be possible to run this. It is, if I want to spend the time in it, but I'm not using this. So I'm hoping to sell this to a restorer who might have use of the entire drivetrain, the gearbox, rear axle, front axles, everything. So if you're someone like that who wants to restore one of these, then please contact me, because I am getting ready to sell it. All right, I'll show you a little bit on the other side. And you'll also see you can control the spark. This is a lever that comes off the distributor. So normally your distributor was set and you bolted it down and it stayed there when you set your spark advance and timing. And this actually had a cable, as you can see, go up and go inside and went up to, I think, the steering wheel from memory. And you could have changed the advance and retard of your timing by a lever inside. They had a 6-volt generator there, and there's your starter. So they did have an electric starter, and the battery set down in the bottom here, just out of sight from at the moment. So yeah, so the body is made here actually in Australia, but the guards, now there's a bit of controversy with this, so don't quote me on this, but the guards, running boards, the chassis, the engine, the instrument panel, the whole clip from the cow forward is all made in America, and then from there back was made here. So like when I pulled out the leftover timber, these were a wooden frame. Well, it was pure eucalypt when I cut it apart, and there you can see the Holden badge, because Holden was a body maker, and a very successful one, before they produced their own car. So I've got a little bit of history more to add to that. But yeah, it's quite a thing. So this will have similar treatment to the truck. I'm looking at widening it 5 inches rather than the 9 of the truck, and obviously I'll put a lot of trouble into keeping all the proportions correct. I may or may not change it from a sedan into a coach. So these were available as a 2-door, which was called a coach in the US, but the Australian made bodies never had it. So remember, the running board and the rear guards and everything like that is all made in America. But this here, there's tiny bits you'll see of the termite wooden frame left up in there, but I've removed it out of the doors and everything like that because it was in a similar state, but I didn't want to remove that in case the whole lot collapsed. You can see all the rot in the bottom of that A-pillar down there. It's horrendous. So yeah, so lots of work, but pretty firm. It's considering it was just kept as garden art. There's the cat. It's not bad at all. That's the fuel tank right at the back, and they came with 18-inch wheels, if I'm correct, by 4.5 inches. So these are the original wire wheels that it came with. And he's also fortunate enough to pick up a spare grille with the hood ornament, everything on it. If you turn the long way, let's see if I can. Oh gee, these are heavy. I'm trying to do it one-handed. The symbol on the, sorry, I've got a head torch on to help on this day. You'll see it's a W for Willys, an O for Overland, and then there's a 6 over the top for the straight 6. These also came in a straight 8 called a 888. But yeah, remarkable condition. Yes, it's got some rust in little places, bottom of the cowl, that sort of thing, but yeah, it's no fuss for me. So, and obviously I'm going to build a whole new roof for it, seeing these were always a fabric top. Rubberized cotton was often a material of choice. So yeah, anyway, so I'll tell you a little bit more. I had to download this because there's no way I can accurately do it. So these were originally sold for $695, straight 6, 3 1/4 bore, 3 7/8 stroke, and were 65 horsepower. I don't know why I've only got 6 there. Anyway, 113-inch wheelbase. The chassis numbers and everything there. So this is the engine number. It is a 90A 20,100 on the engine, and this is what the chassis plate is. It's 690A, which makes it the second half, and it says I. It's not a 1, but that doesn't make sense later if you look at the numbers. So between June 32 and December 32, the chassis numbers go from 14,000 2001 to 20,957. So if that was really a 1 and 7i, then 19,000 would make sense. From December 31 until June 32, the chassis numbers went from 1,001 to 14,148. So, yeah, but anyway, so that's all that I can tell you about that. In 1910, Holden and Frost began trimming motor vehicles. In 1914, they built their first one-off car body from imported Lancia chassis. So, and larger contracts followed. Ironically, Dodge, who later became a competitor. So, why the bodies were made is they're saying in 1917, during World War One, there was a restriction on how much could be brought over, and so the Holden ends up building bodies for Overlander, Chevrolet, Durant, Huntmobile, Dodge, and by 23 they were doing over 12,000 bodies a year. And in 24, Holden Motor Builder Bodies became a sole Australian bodybuilder for General Motors General Motor Vehicles, and did over 22,000 bodies for them. And 11,000 of those were for GM, so they were still doing the other makes. In fact, they were doing 20 different makes. So, but during the Great Depression in 1930, they went from 34,000 units to a mere 1,651. And in 1931, General Motors Holden were able to buy the entire Holden's multi-body builders and merge it with their North American. And that's when they took over it. They're saying the Australian government wouldn't let the money go back to the US, so they decided to use the money to buy Holden instead and bought it out. So this was just after GM had taken over the body manufacturer, but they were still doing the other things. So you can see here, this is for all 1931, 1932 and 1933 combined years. This is only their production show. This shows you all the different models, all your different Chevrolets, your Pontiacs, your Oldsmobiles, your Buicks, your Vauxhalls, your Austins, Plymouth, Chrysler, more Chryslers, Hillmans, Morris. And so here is where the 690 comes into. It was called a Willys Medium sedan, and only over all those 3 years, so 31, 32, 33, they only made 106 of them, and never more was ever made by them. So, and then they started the Willys 77 in 1934, the production of those. So you got DeSoto's, Essex, Bedfords, Standard, yeah, so Graham Page, Ario, so yeah, 20 different brands. Shows the production numbers there over the 3 years there, and then 34 and 35. So anyway, that's a bit long-winded. So yes, this is what's going to keep me occupied now that the truck is finished. Go 6.4 Hemi still see some of the orange block down the bottom there for the 6.4s. So as you can see, it's in quite good condition, and I bought it off the auction block because the one fault is the dealer told them they needed a new ABS module which controls all your traction control, your brakes and everything, and they didn't bother doing it. So, oh, wait till the next service. Well, first time there was a wet road, this is what happened. Look at that. They're all important. So, it's in remarkable condition, and I got it for less than what I could buy the engine for alone, let alone transmission, computers, brakes, suspension, and remarkably to the exact dollar that the Grand Cherokee donor was for the truck. I mean, to the dollar. That's just spooky. So it's got a little bit of damage up the back. It's broken this courtesy and those scrape marks of the auction house. These weren't in the photos when I was buying it, and they moved around with a forklift. So Pickles Auctions, that's what you can expect for their service. They just don't give a damn. I wasn't even allowed to pick it up from the yard because they only allowed forking onto trailers that are owned by towing companies that are heavily insured. Yet that's the way they treat them. No driving allowed, no winching allowed. Anyway, I'll turn this back off again. Well, the innards of this transmission instruments, all the 6.4 Hemi 5-speed transmission last year of the 5-speed, will all one day fit into that. Now look how narrow that grill is compared to that one. And you can see it's going to be impossible the way it is without putting bulges in the side, but I'm actually going to widen this one just like I did with the truck. I'm going to go probably around 5 inches wider rather than 9 like the truck. I'm trying to keep this a bit on the slim side if I can. We'll just do all the measurements and see what it takes.